Ayanidhi Taradasa Vidyanidhi Rajendra Haila Tanha Hate. Tanhara Kinkora Jaya Dharma Name Parichaya Parampara Janu Palo Mate. Jaya Dharma Dasye Kyati Shri Purushottama Yati Tanahaite Brahmanya Tirtha Suri. Vyasa Tirtha Tanra Dasa Lakshmi Pati Vyasa Dasa Tanahaite Madhavendra Puri. Madhavendra Purivara Sishyavara Shri Ishvara Nityananda Shri Advaita Vibhu. Ishvara Puri Kedanya Koilena Shri Chaitanya Jagad Guru Gora Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu Sri Chaitanya Radha Krishna Nahi Anya Rupanuga Janera Jivana. Vishvambara Priyankara Shri Swarupa Damodara Shri Goswami Rupa Sanatan. Rupa Priya Mahajana Jiva Raghunatha Tanra Priya Kavi Krishna Das Krishna Dasa Priyavara Narottama Seva Para Yanrapada Vishvanatha Asa Vishvanatha Bhakta Sata Baladeva Jagannatha Tanra Priya Shri Bhakti Vinoda Mahabhagavata Para Shri Gora Kishora Para Hari Bhajane Deyanra Moda Ihara Paramahamsa Gorangera Nija Bamsa Tandera Charane Mama Gati Ami Seva Udasina Namete Tridandi Dina Shri Bhakti Siddhanta Sarasvati Shri Barsha Manavivara Sada Sevya Seva Para Tanhara Dayita Dasa Nama Tara Pradana Patraka Shri Bhakti Vedanta Nama Patita Chanete Daya Dhamma Shri Guru Parampara by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Goswami Prabhupada. In the beginning of creation, four-headed Brahma received the science of devotional service from the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna. Rama taught this divine science to Devarshi Narada, and Narada imparted it to Krishna Dvaipayana Vyas. Sripad Madhvacharya, who is also known as Purna Pragna Tirtha, calls himself a servant of Vyas and is the guru and sole refuge of Padmanabh Tirtha. The two other principal disciples of Madhava are Nirhari Tirtha and Madhava Tirtha. Madhava Tirtha accepted the great Paramahamsa Aksobhya Tirtha as a disciple. The principal disciple of Aksobhya Tirtha was known as Jayatirtha, serving whom was Jnana Sindhu's only purpose in life. Jnana Sindhu taught the science of devotional service to Dayanidhi, whose servant was Vidyanidhi. Vidyanidhi in turn imparted this knowledge to Rajendra Tirtha, and he accepted Jayadharma as his servant. In this way, you should properly understand this disciplic succession. The great sannyasi Sri Purushottam Tirtha received the knowledge of devotional service from Jayadharma. The principal disciple of Purushottam Tirtha was the saintly Subramanya Tirtha, whose servant was the great Vyasa Tirtha. Vyasa Tirtha's servant was Lakshmipati Tirtha, and his disciple was Madhavendra Puri Goswami. The chief disciple of Madhavendra Puri was Ishvara Puri, and two of his other disciples were the renowned incarnations of Godhead, Sri Nityananda and Advaita Acharya. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the spiritual preceptor of all the worlds, made Ishvara Puri greatly fortunate by accepting him as his spiritual master. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is none other than Sri Radha and Krishna, and is the very life of those Vaishnavas who follow in the footsteps of Sri Rupa Goswami. Sri Swarup Damodar Goswami, Rupa Goswami, and Sanatana Goswami gave great happiness to Vishvambar, Lord Chaitanya. The great souls Jiva Goswami and Raghunath Das Goswami became very dear to Rupa Goswami. Raghunath Das Goswami's beloved student was Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami, who was an intimate friend of Lokanath Goswami. Lokanath Goswami's single disciple was Narottam Das Thakur. He always engaged in the service of his guru and was also very dear to Krishna Das Kaviraj. To serve the lotus feet of Narottam Das Thakur was the only desire of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur was the instructing spiritual master of Baladev Vidyabhushan. Jagannath Das Babaji was a very prominent acharya after Sri Baladev Vidyabhushan and was the beloved instructing spiritual master of Sri Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Bhaktivinoda Thakur's intimate friend and associate was the eminent Mahabhagavat Sri Gaurkishore Das Babaji, whose sole joy was found in Hari Bhajan. All these great saintly Vaishnava Paramahamsas are members of Lord Gauranga's spiritual family. Their lotus feet are my refuge. I am devoid of any real interest in devotional service and am but a poor and lowly Tridandi sannyasi named Sri Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. The renowned Sri Barshabhanavi Dayita Das, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, is always engaged in the service of his spiritual master, Srila Gorkishore Das Babaji. The foremost disciple preacher, his foremost disciple preacher is Srila A.C. Bhaktisiddhanta Swami Prabhupada, who has spread the message of Lord Chaitanya throughout the world and is thus a reservoir of compassion for all fallen souls. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane. I offer my respectful obeisances unto His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who is very dear to Lord Krishna on this earth, having taken shelter at His lotus feet. Namaste Sarasvati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paskita Deshatarane. Our respectful obeisances are unto you, O spiritual master, servant of Saraswati Goswami. You are kindly preaching the message of Lord Chaitanya Dev and are delivering the Western countries, which are filled with impersonalism and voidism. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Dinamane. I offer my respectful obeisances unto His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, who is very dear to Lord Krishna on this earth, having taken shelter at His lotus feet. Shri Varshabhanavi Devi Dayataya Kripabdaye Krishna Sambandha Vigyana Dayane Prabhave Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances to Shri Varshabhanavi Devi Dayata Das, who is favored by Srimati Radharani and who is the ocean of transcendental mercy and the deliverer of the science of Krishna. Madhur Ujvala Premadya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktida Shri Gora Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namo Stute. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you, the personified energy of Sri Chaitanya's mercy, who delivered devotional service enriched with the conjugal love of Radha and Krishna, coming exactly in the line of revelation of Srila Rupa Goswami. Namaste Gauravani Sri Murtaye Dinatarane Rupanuga Virudapa Siddhanta Dvanta Harine. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you, who are the personified teachings of Lord Chaitanya. You are the deliverer of the fallen souls. You do not tolerate any statement against the teachings of devotional service enunciated by Srila Rupa Goswami. It's proper that the speaker is given a garland. Adore ye all the happy day, blessed than heaven, sweeter than May, when he appeared at Puri, the holy place, my Lord and Master, his divine grace. O my Master, evangelic angel, give us thy light, light up thy candle, struggle for existence, a human race, the only hope is divine grace. Misled we are, all going astray, save us, Lord, our fervent pray. Wander thy ways to turn our face, adore thy feet, your divine grace. Forgotten Krishna, we fallen souls, paying most heavy, the illusion's toll. Darkness around, all untrace. The only hope is divine grace. Message of service thou hast brought, a healthful life as Chaitanya wrought. Unknown to all, it's full of grace. That's your gift, your divine grace. Absolute is sentient, thou hath proved. Impersonal calamity, thou hath moved. This gives us a life, anew and fresh. Worship thy feet, your divine grace. Had you not come, who had told the message of Krishna, forceful and bold? That's your right. You have the mace. Save me a fallen, your divine grace. The line of service, as drawn by you, is pleasing and healthy like morning dew. The oldest of all, but in new dress, miracle done, your divine grace. So, of course, this is Srila Prabhupada, who is known at the time as Abhay Charanaravinda Das. His Vyas Puja offering on the 25th of February, 1935. And along with this beautiful poem, there is, okay. He had already been given the instruction to preach in English from his spiritual master and encouraged by his godbrothers, especially those who were very much helpful to their spiritual master in producing transcendental literature. Professor Sanyal, Vasudev, Ananta Vasudev, others. So Srila Prabhupada composed a very beautiful offering as well. Speech. Gentlemen, the offerings of such homage as have been arranged this evening to the Acharya Dev is not a sectarian concern, because when we speak of the fundamental principle of Guru Dev or Acharya Dev, we speak of something that is of universal application. There does not arise any question of discriminating my Guru from that of yours or anyone else's. There is only one Guru who appears in an infinity of forms to teach you, me, and all others. The Guru or Acharya Dev, as we learn from the bona fide scriptures, delivers the message of the absolute world. I mean, the transcendental abode of the absolute personality where everything non-differentially serves the absolute truth. Like the poem, the speech was personal, but even more than the poem, it was authoritative, philosophical preaching. The godbrothers were impressed to hear Abhay presenting the Vaishnava philosophy so expertly. How was it possible? Of course, it should not have come as a surprise. He had heard the Vaishnava philosophy from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati, just like his godbrothers. Why should he not be able to enunciate the teachings of his spiritual master? Until now, no one knew he could preach in English so expertly. And of course, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada was so much impressed, particularly with the poem in the sixth couplet, absolute is sentient, thou hast proved, impersonal calamity, thou hast moved. He understood that our Srila Prabhupada completely understood the mission, his mission. Our Srila Prabhupada has revealed to us that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta considered our Srila Prabhupada a very trustworthy person. So much so that the senior-most godbrothers were greatly surprised that their spiritual master would confide in Abhay Charanaravinda Das, who, by their estimation, was a newer or recently joined disciple. Like if you, God brothers, God sisters of the spiritual master, those who've been initiated for 30, 40 or more years, and then someone is a junior disciple. This is 1935. Prabhupada was initiated devotee for 2 years at the time. That the caste Goswamis, they went to the police chief in Navadvip. How much was 25,000 rupees worth in the late 1920s and early 1930s? We figured it out. A lot of money. We will do something against Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and you take no action. And the chief of police, he refused. Of course, we take bribes and we indulge in such things, but for a saintly person, a sadhu, I cannot dare. So he sent the people away, and then he went and confided to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, this is the position. You take very good care of yourself. Because he protested so vehemently against the caste Brahmanism, which Srila Prabhupada has described to us, led to the destruction of India and the British taking advantage of the partition of India into Pakistan. Because the caste Goswamis made it so difficult on whom they considered the lower castes that the Persian and other Muslim invaders took advantage of that, said, why are you bothering with this so-called Hindu religion? You come to our side and you are our equal brother. So this was unheard of. Even Lord Chaitanya, they're complaining to the Chand Kazi, the Muslim ruler, that he is destroying our Hindu religion by inviting everybody, no matter what the caste, to take part in Krishna consciousness. You must stop him. Therefore, if the absolute truth is one, about which we think there is no difference of opinion, the Guru also cannot be two. The Acharya Dev to whom we have assembled tonight to offer our humble homage is not the Guru of a sectarian institution or one out of many differing exponents of the truth. Quite amazing that this is not Prabhupada's first language. And that he could present so masterfully with such accurate vocabulary is amazing. On the contrary, he is the Jagat Guru, or the Guru of all of us. The only difference is that some obey him wholeheartedly, while others do not obey him directly. Gentlemen, our knowledge is so poor, our senses are so imperfect, and our sources are so limited that it is not possible for us to have even the slightest knowledge of the absolute region without surrendering ourselves at the lotus feet of Sri Vyasadeva or his bona fide representative. The transcendental knowledge hereby explained had been known in India for thousands of years. And this knowledge, although presently obscured, was India's real gift to the world. Prabhupada arriving in London's Heathrow Airport, facing a battery of very proud British journalists. Why have you come here, sir? We have our own religion. Implying we don't need what you're bringing. Srila Prabhupada responded to them, your country forcibly took everything of value from India that you could possibly find for nearly 200 years. But I have come to give you the greatest treasure, which you forgot to take for free. No reply. Defeated. Silenced. We must conclude that the darkness of the present age is not due to the lack of material advancement, but that we have lost the clue to our spiritual advancement, which is the prime necessity of human life and the criterion of the highest type of civilization. Throwing bombs from airplanes is no advancement of civilization, from the primitive, uncivilized way of dropping big stones on the heads of the enemies from the tops of the hills. Improvement of the art of killing our neighbors by inventing machine guns and by means of poisonous gases is certainly no advancement from primitive barbarism, priding itself on its art of killing by bows and arrows, nor does the development of a sense of parampara selfishness prove anything more than intellectual animalism. Thus, while others were yet in the womb of historical oblivion, the sages of India had developed a different kind of civilization which enables us to know ourselves. I was mentioning this in the previous class, but the topic that was being questioned was uh, the science of making airplanes, rockets, and spiritual technology. The disciple was asking Srila Prabhupada, where is this in the Vedas, or how can you come to know this? How can you be instructed? And Prabhupada's two-word answer, very strong and emphatic and immediate, was Guru Parampara. So the sages of India developed a different kind of civilization which enables us to know ourselves. They had discovered that we are not at all material entities, but that we are all spiritual, permanent, and non-destructible servants of the Absolute. The speech continued, describing the horrible consequences of a misspent human life, the sufferings of repeated birth and death. Again and again, Abai stressed the need to surrender to the spiritual master. He criticized empirical, mundane philosophers, godless politicians, and blind sense gratifiers. Prabhupada's first meeting with his spiritual master 13 years earlier in 1922, "You're an intelligent young man. Why don't you preach Lord Chaitanya's message all over the world?" At that time, the number one goal for everyone in India, and led by the leaders of India, the greatest intellectual minds and thoughtful, good-hearted men and women of the time, was we must gain independence from imperial British rule. And that cause, the people's cause, is in itself God. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, very quickly, masterfully, and compassionately defeated that. Many personalities at that time would have questioned Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's relevance. It doesn't matter who's ruling, and we can't wait for a political change. Krishna consciousness is so absolutely essential and urgent and powerful that it can solve everything right now without trying to stick our fingers into the Chinese handcuffs. Actually, there's one statement by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. The world stands in no need of any reformer. The world has a very competent person for guiding its minutest happenings. The person who finds that there is scope for reform of the world himself stands in need of reform. The world goes on in its own perfect way. No person can deflect it by the breadth of a hair from the course chalked out for it by Providence. When we perceive any change being actually affected in the course of events in this world by the agency of any particular individual, we also know very well that the agent possesses no real power at any stage. The agent finds himself driven forward by a force belonging to a different category from himself. The course of the world is not required to be changed by the activity of any person. What is necessary is to change our outlook to this very world. This was done for the contemporary generation by the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It can be known only to the recipients of his mercy. The scriptures declare that it is only necessary to listen with an open mind to the name of Krishna from the lips of a bona fide devotee. As soon as Krishna enters the listening ear, he clears up the vision of the listener so that he no longer has any ambition of ever acting the part of a reformer of any other person, because he finds that nobody is left without the very highest guidance. It is therefore his own reform, by the grace of God, whose supreme necessity and nature he is increasingly able to realize by the eternally continuing mercy of the Supreme Lord. And of course, such a surrendered personality is placed in the position of authority and be as representative of the Supreme Lord's instruction, so much so, what is it? I think the opening, yes. In the beginning of every book, there is a little statement or poem. Ye me bhakta jana partha, name na me bhaktas chatejana. Mad bhaktanam chaye bhaktyas, te me bhakta tamamata. This is from the Adi Purana. Lord Krishna told Arjuna, those who are directly my devotees are actually not my devotees, but those who are devotees of my servant are factually my devotees. We were reading an excerpt from the 50-year ago today Vyas Puja address to the devotees in New Panihati Dham Mandir, Atlanta, Georgia, which is still in the same location, 1427. Anyway, Ponce de Leon Avenue, in a very, very good and prestigious section of that city. Don't try to jump over the head of the spiritual master to go to Krishna directly. That is failure. Always keep compact in service to the spiritual master, and you will receive the full blessings of the Supreme Lord. Gentlemen, although we are like ignorant children in the knowledge of the transcendence, still His divine grace, my Guru Dev, has kindled a small fire within us to dissipate the invincible darkness of the empirical knowledge, and we are so much so on the safe side that no amount of philosophical argument of the empiric school of thought can deviate us an inch from the position of eternal dependence on the lotus feet of His divine grace. So just see, in the last 80, 90, 100 years, let's say since 1918, 107 years ago, actually, next year, no, this year, 1918, 2025, 108 years since Srila Bhaktisiddhanta started the preaching mission, founding the Gaudiya Math. To step outside the box of Darwinism and just all this so-called scientific idea and class distinction and eugenics and prejudices. It was unheard of. Here we are now. Let's just think. You have to be open-minded. You have to see the equality in everyone and respect other people's views and religions. And the current president of the United States, the wife of his vice president is named Usha. This is the name of goddess Parvati. The prime minister of India comes and in the White House with gifts to the children of the vice president, which are books made by ISKCON devotees for children. The soon-to-be made director of the FBI is named Kashyapa. Kashyapa Patel. And of course, the director of the intelligence is the daughter of uh, disciples, contemporary disciples of Srila Prabhupada, Siddhaswarupananda from Hawaii. And her very name is the name of Tulsi. So, how things become, these are just some examples. There are so many examples of how spreading the rays of the benediction moon. And I can see in my own lifetime to be a vegetarian. There's no way you was it cool or hip. They thought you were like crazy or queer or whatever. Be a vegetarian in the 1960s or 70s. What's wrong with you? How are you going to get your protein? So many things. So this is quite a statement at this time. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was such a powerful personality that he defeated all of these things which were very strong at that time. So this statement by Srila Prabhupada is a very wonderful glorification. No amount of philosophical argument of the empiric school of thought can deviate us an inch from the position of our eternal dependence on the lotus feet of his divine grace. And we are prepared, not just, oh, I take shelter like I'm a little, you know, kitten in the litter and I have like no strength. I leave it all to the mother lioness to do everything. The real disciple of the spiritual master, fully imbibing the instruction of the spiritual master, becomes strong, just like the spiritual master, and acts on his behalf, giving him all credit, but is given equal, if not even more power. If one is true to the service of Lord Nityananda, one can even surpass Lord Nityananda by the grace of Lord Nityananda. And this is love. The father and mother want to see the son and daughter in a more glorious and better position than themselves. That is their happiness. And we are prepared to challenge the most erudite scholars of the Mayavad school on this vital issue, that the personality of Godhead and his transcendental sports in Goloka alone constitute the sublime information of the Vedas. He then ended his speech with an eloquent prayer of submission. Personally, I have no hope to have any direct service for the coming crores of births or the sojourn of my life, but I am confident that some day or other I shall be delivered from this mire of delusion in which I am present so deeply sunk. Therefore, let me, with all my earnestness, pray at the lotus feet of my divine master to let me suffer the lot for which I am destined to do for all my past misgivings. Lord Brahma's prayers, Tatenu Kampam Shishukshimano, 14th chapter, 10th canto. One who goes on offering deep, heartfelt obeisances to the Supreme Lord from the core of his heart, undergoing all of the karmic reactions of the previous life, never budging an inch in his faith, becomes a rightful claimant to the kingdom of God. The devotee thinks he's not fit to go back home, back to Godhead, but the Lord, from his, makes arrangements without the devotee's knowledge or being able to really perceive it, to take him back home, back to Godhead, just after the present life. So how these contradictory things, this contradictory principle, can be true or both work together, Trinadapi Sunichena, humility. And humility is always kept very pure and fine tuned by always trying to expand the mission of the spiritual master. Any other position is a position of pride. Just like Narottam Das Thakur and his Nityananda, prayer to Lord Nityananda, blinded by materialistic life, they say, who is this Lord Nityananda? Who are these devotees? What can they do for me? I don't care. But to let me have this power of recollection that I am nothing but a tiny servant of the Almighty Absolute Godhead, realized through the unflinching mercy of my divine Master. One should not think that I have taken shelter of other things that have proved flimsy and false, that the shelter of Lord Nityananda is also something like that. No, it's permanent shelter. Unflinching mercy. And the more you practice and let the years and decades of your life go by, you will see and understand that the mercy of the spiritual master and parampara never flinches, is never faulty, is never mistaken, but always firm and strong and growing, greater and bigger, more and more as every day goes by. The unflinching mercy of my divine master. Let me therefore bow down at his lotus feet with all the humility at my command. So he submitted both the poem and speech to the harmonist. Prabhupada had written this poem and had somehow not had a copy or lost a copy. And when Guru Das and the other devotees in London, where exactly they found it, in a library or there was a Gaudiya Math, somehow they came upon Prabhupada's original writing and presented it to Prabhupada in London in 1969. You can imagine how joyous Prabhupada was to be reunited with this poem. The poem, Abai's first publication, announced him as a competent writer in English, and Swami Bhakti Pradeep Tirtha, editor of The Harmonist, informally dubbed him as Kavi, learned poet. Some of Abai's godbrothers also picked up the name and began calling him Kavi. Most of them, even the sannyasis, were not so proficient in English, but Abai was not ordinary. They could appreciate that the poem was personal, written out of Abai's genuine worship and his joy at having accepted a bona fide spiritual master. But it was also written strictly in accord with the conclusion of the scriptures. For Abai, however, the glory of the Sri Vyas Puja homage came when the poem reached Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and it gave him pleasure. The stanza, absolute is sentient, thou hast proved, impersonal calamity, thou hast moved. In that simple couplet, Abai had captured the essence of his spiritual master's preaching against the Mayavadis, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta took it as an indication of how well Abai knew the mind of his spiritual master. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta also found the essay pleasing, and he showed it to some of his confidential devotees, and he instructed the editor of The Harmonist, whatever he writes, publish it. We're doing okay? I'm prepared to go. No eating right now. And it's a holiday. I mean, it's secular holiday. Okay. It's always wonderful to look at the meeting of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta and our Srila Prabhupada. So wonderful. Abai's friend Narendranath Malik was insistent. How wonderful. One of his contemporary friends as a teenager and young man had seen Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati first and had dragged him. Like, who here had a friend and say you should come to the temple, and they brought you. So what mercy that this person was chosen or arranged by the Lord to bring Srila Prabhupada to meet his spiritual master. He wanted Abhay to see a sadhu from Mayapur. Naren and some of his friends had already met the sadhu at his nearby ashram in Uttadanga Junction Road. So this property has been in very recent years acquired by Srila Prabhupada's devotees, our movement. I've not been there. Who has been there? Has it been like, as far as possible, reinstated to the way it was 100 or more years ago? Speak loud. Ongoing or we're done? I think the actual rooftop place, and I think they have some murtis there, that Prabhupada is a young man and paying obeisance and listening to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. Anyway, you see big leaders, they're going to have like a summit, and they come together and there's huge security and nobody can try to assassinate the president or the prime minister. But here, the most important meeting, like Rupa and Sanatan meeting Lord Chaitanya at Prayagraj. How important is that meeting? And here, our Srila Prabhupada is a young 25-year-old man, a follower of Gandhi, on a rooftop in Calcutta with the most important personality, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. No one could understand. No need for security guards, no need for, Secret Service. Is Krishna protecting this meeting, such an important meeting, where the seed for the deliverance of the entire earth planet, all human beings, all living entities, to be delivered back home, back to Godhead with this meeting. Krishna's masterful artistry and arrangement. At the height of Prabhupada's success here in the United States, there were actual cult movements, real cults. And there was the rise of the deprogramming, anti-cult. And Prabhupada even said, if they understood what my mission is and what I really want to accomplish, they would, I'm not even going to say the word. Just like Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, there was threats against him. So Narendranath and his friends wanted Abhai's opinion. Everyone within their circle of friends considered Abhai the leader. And Prabhupada admitted that I've always been the leader my whole life. In whatever association or circle, I was always in charge. So if Naren could tell the others that Abhai also had high regard for the sadhu, then that would confirm their own estimations. Abhai was reluctant to go. Naren pressed him. They stood talking amidst the passerby in the crowded early evening street as the traffic of horse-drawn hackneys, ox carts, and occasional auto taxis and motor buses moved noisily on the road. Naren put his hand firmly around his friend's arm, trying to drag him forward. Has anyone ever been like physically dragged against one's will to go somewhere? And if it's not for a devotional spiritual purpose, then the result of being brought there forcibly is invariably not a happy experience. Abai smiled, but stubbornly pulled the other way. Naren argued that since they were only a few blocks away, they should at least pay a short visit. Abai laughed and asked to be excused. People could see that the two young men were friends, but it was a curious sight. The handsome young man, dressed in white khadi kurta and dhoti, being dragged along by his friend. Naren explained that the sadhu, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati, was a Vaishnava and a great devotee of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. One of his disciples, a sannyasi, had visited the Malik house and had invited them to meet Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. A few of the Maliks had gone to see him and had been very much impressed. So already some of Srila Prabhupada's greater family members from the Malik household had gone. But Abai remained skeptical. Oh no, I know all these sadhus. I'm not going. Abai had seen many sadhus in his childhood. Every day his father had entertained at least 3 or 4 in his home. Some of them were no more than beggars, and some even smoked ganja. Gaur Mohan had been very liberal in allowing anyone who wore the saffron robes of a sannyasi to come. Of course, Srila Prabhupada loved his father, and his father would pray to everyone who he considered or even resembled a saintly person. Please bless my son so that he can become a great devotee of Srimati Radharani. Prabhupada writes in a purport in the Bhagavatam that his father would do like this, and he makes this statement, now somehow or other we are engaged in that service. When Narada Muni instructed and told Dhruva Maharaj to go to the forest of Madhuvan in Vrindavan and seek out the mercy of the Supreme Lord, and all your problems will be solved, your desires will be fulfilled. Prabhupada writes that for one who has suffered the injustice of this material world, forest going is compulsory. For the Vaishnavas, the best forest is the forest of Vrindavan. If one goes to Vrindavan and takes shelter under the lotus feet of Vrindavaneshwari, Srimati Radharani, all the problems of one's life are solved without difficulty. So Srila Prabhupada himself did that, not to go and retire and depart the planet from Vrindavan, but to prepare himself to bring Vrindavan and distribute Vrindavan all over the world. But did it mean that though a man was no more than a beggar and a ganja smoker, he had to be considered saintly just because he dressed as a sannyasi or is collecting funds in the name of building a monastery or could influence people with his speech? No, by and large, they were a disappointing lot. Abai had even seen a man in the neighborhood who was a beggar by occupation. In the morning, when others dressed in their work clothes and went to their jobs, this man would put on saffron cloth and go out to beg, and in this way earn his livelihood. But was it fitting that such a so-called sadhu be paid a respectful visit as if he were a guru? Ren argued that he felt that this particular sadhu was very learned scholar, and that Abai should at least meet him and judge for himself. Abai wished that Naren would not behave in this way, but finally he could no longer refuse. So Narendranath had been there before, and the brahmachari at the door recognized him and invited him and our Srila Prabhupada upstairs to the roof, where Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was sitting and enjoying the early evening atmosphere with a few disciples and guests. Sitting with his back very straight, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta appeared tall. I believe he was 6 foot 1 inches tall, which for Bengalis is extraordinary. What to speak of Indians in general, to be that height. He was slender, his arms were long, and his complexion was fair and golden. He wore round bifocals with simple frames. His nose was sharp, his forehead broad, and expression was very scholarly, yet not at all timid. The vertical markings of Vaishnav tilak on his forehead were familiar to Abai, as were the simple sannyas robes that draped over his right shoulder, leaving the other shoulder and half his chest bare. He wore Tulsi neck beads, and the clay Vaishnav markings of tilak were visible at his throat, shoulder, and upper arms. A clean white Brahminical thread was looped around his neck and draped across his chest. Abai and the Ren, having both been raised in Vaishnav families, immediately offered prostrated obeisances at the sight of the revered sannyasi. While the two young men were still rising and preparing to sit, before any preliminary formalities of conversation had begun, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta immediately said to them, "You are educated young men. Why don't you preach Lord Chaitanya's message throughout the whole world?" Abai could hardly believe what he had just heard. They had not even exchanged views, yet this sadhu was telling them what they should do. Sitting face to face with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, Abai was gathering his wits and trying to gain a comprehensible impression, but this person had already told them to become preachers and go all over the world. Abai was immediately impressed. But he wasn't going to drop his intelligent skepticism. This is 1922. Prabhupada was eligible 2 years earlier to receive his diploma. So for 2 years, and he had refused. So for 2 years now, staunchly, and he put his money where his mouth is, to coin the saying, to quote the saying, by refusing his British Scottish Church's College degree. And his father was friends with Dr. Bose, who had engaged him in working in his pharmaceutical business, so there was an income. So a real believer in the cause. And for the first time hearing something different and completely transcendental and authoritative, literally, our Srila Prabhupada's mind was blown. There were assumptions into what this sadhu had said. Abai had already announced himself by his dress to be a follower of Gandhi, and he felt the impulse to raise an argument. Yes, as he continued to listen to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta speak, he also began to feel won over by the sadhu's strength of conviction. He could sense that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta didn't care for anything but Lord Chaitanya, and this was what made him great. This was why followers had gathered around him, and why Abai felt himself drawn, inspired, and humbled, and wanted to hear more. But he felt obliged to make an argument to test the truth. Who will hear your Chaitanya's message? We are a dependent country. First, India must become independent. How can we spread Indian culture if we are under British rule? I had not just asked haughtily, just to be provocative, yet his question was clearly a challenge. If we were to take this sadhu's remark to them as a serious one, and there was nothing in Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's demeanor to indicate that he had been anything but serious, Abai felt compelled to question how he could propose such a thing while India was still dependent. Now, the independence movement had picked up steam by this time, and the British weren't going to let India go so easily. So there were a lot of very terrible things that the British were doing at this time. What might have been the case in the 19th century, or even in the latter part of the 18th century, where things were not so bad. But now, in the beginning of the 20th century, it was horrible. So everyone wanted to get free from the British. So quite a stark contrast to the opinion of the people in general and the intelligentsia. How could he say such a thing? The whole world of India beyond this little Uttadunga rooftop was in turmoil and seemed to support what Abai had said. Many famous leaders of Bengal, many saints, Mahatma Gandhi, men who were educated and spiritually minded, all might very well have asked this same question, challenging this sadhu's relevancy. Yet he was dismissing everything and everyone as if they were of no consequence. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta spoke, whether one power or another ruled was a temporary situation, but the eternal reality is Krishna consciousness, and the real self is the spirit soul. No man-made political system, therefore, could actually help humanity. This was the verdict of the Vedic scriptures and the line of spiritual masters. Though everyone is an eternal servant of God, when one takes himself to be the temporary body and regards the nation of his birth as worshipable, he comes under illusion. The leaders and followers of the world's political movements, including the movement for independence, were simply cultivating this illusion. Real welfare work, whether individual, social, or political, should help prepare a person for his next life and help him reestablish his eternal relationship with the Supreme. Abai listened attentively to the arguments of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. He had recalled a Bengali poet who had written that even less advanced civilizations like China and Japan were independent, and yet India labored under political oppression. Abai knew well the philosophy of nationalism, which stressed that Indian independence had to come first. An oppressed people was a reality. The British slaughter of innocent citizens was a reality, and independence would benefit the people. Spiritual life was a luxury that could be afforded only after independence. In the present times, the cause of national liberation from the British was the only relevant spiritual movement. The people's cause was in itself God. So we're going to try to shorten things here. We've already gone a long time. The people were now faithless, and Srila Bhaktisiddhanta had therefore they no longer believed that devotional service could remove all anomalies, even on the political scene. He went on to criticize anyone who was ignorant of the soul and yet claimed to be a leader. He even cited names of contemporary leaders and pointed out their failures, and he emphasized the urgent need to render the highest good to humanity by educating people about the eternal soul and the soul's relation to Krishna and to devotional service. Abai had never forgotten the worship of Lord Krishna or his teachings in Bhagavad Gita, and his family had always worshipped Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, whose mission Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati was espousing. As these Gaudiya Math people worshiped Krishna, he also had worshipped Krishna throughout his life and had never forgotten Krishna. But now he was astounded to hear the Vaishnava philosophy presented so masterfully. Despite his involvement in college, marriage, the national movement, and other affairs, he had never forgotten Krishna. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was now stirring up with him his original Krishna consciousness. By the words of this spiritual master, not only was he remembering Krishna, but he felt his Krishna consciousness being enhanced 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times. What had been unspoken in Abai's boyhood, what had been vague in Jagannath Puri, what he had been distracted from at college, and what he had been protected in by his father, now surged forth within Abai in responsive feelings, and he wanted to keep it. He felt himself defeated, but he liked it. He suddenly realized that he had never before been defeated, but this defeat was not a loss. On the contrary, it was an immense gain. I was from a Vaishnav family, so I could appreciate what he was preaching. Of course, he was speaking to everyone, but he found something in me. and I was convinced about his argument and mode of presentation. I was so much struck with wonder. I can understand. Here is the proper person who can give a real religious idea. It was late. Abai and the Ren had been talking with Srila Bhaktisiddhanta for more than 2 hours. One of the brahmacharis gave them each a bit of prasadam in their open palms, and they rose gratefully and took their leave. They walked down the stairs and onto the street. The night was dark. A few shops were open. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's explanation of the independence movement as a temporary, incomplete cause had made a deep impression on him. He felt himself less a nationalist and more a follower of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. He thought that it would have been better if he were not married. By this time, he had already had his first child, born in 1921. He also thought it would have been if were not married. This great personality was asking him to preach. He could have immediately joined, but to leave his family would have been an injustice. Walking away from the ashram, the Ren turned to his friend. So, Abai, what was your impression? What did you think of him? He's wonderful, replied Abai. The message of Lord Chaitanya is in the hands of a very expert person. I accepted him as my spiritual master immediately, not officially, but in my heart, I was thinking that I have met such a very nice, saintly person. I'm going to choose something from Prabhupada on one of the appearance days of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta to conclude this meeting and let everyone go about their very important activities. Actually, we'll do this. I think that His Divine Grace, Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur, is always seeing my activities and guiding me within my heart by His words. It is said in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Tena Brahma Hirdaya Adikavaye. Spiritual inspiration comes from within the heart, wherein the Supreme Personality of Godhead in His Paramatma feature is always sitting with all His devotees and associates. It is to be admitted that whatever translation work I have done is through the inspiration of my spiritual master, because personally I am most insignificant and incompetent to do this materially impossible work. I do not think myself a very learned scholar, but I have full faith in the service of my spiritual master, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. If there is any credit to my activities of translating, it is all due to His Divine Grace. Certainly, if His Divine Grace was physically present at this time, it would have been a great occasion for jubilation. So, of course, this is the completion of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, but we can extend this to all of our successes in spreading and propagating Krishna consciousness. Whoever we are and whatever we're doing, if we're sincerely trying to please the predecessor spiritual masters and please Krishna, then this certainly adds to the happiness and occasion for great jubilation of such a personality as Srila Prabhupada's spiritual master. But even though he is not physically present, I am confident that he is very much pleased by this work of translation. Prabhupada is on these days would speak that there's two types of association, Vapu and Vani. Vapu is sometimes available, but mostly not. But if we stick to the Vani, which is eternal, then we will remain very, very fixed up. I never felt alone. I always felt the presence of my spiritual master because I'm always executing his instruction. I am confident that he is very much pleased by the work of translation. He was very fond of seeing many books published to spread the Krishna consciousness movement. So this is a very cogent statement coming now. We should all, my humble recommendation, memorize and remember this statement. This is a very nice sutra-like um, definition of our individual and collective purpose. Therefore, our society, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, has been formed to execute the order of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and His Divine Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarasvati Thakur. It is my wish that the devotees of Lord Chaitanya all over the world enjoy this translation, and I'm glad to express my gratitude to the learned men in the Western countries who are so pleased with my work that they are ordering in advance all my books that will be published in the future. On this occasion, therefore, I request my disciples who are determined to help me in this work to continue their cooperation, or if it's not continuing, or if it's broken, reestablish it and begin again. Cooperation, a little bit, partly, half, fully, so that philosophers, scholars, religionists, and the people in general, all over the world, will benefit by reading our transcendental literature, such as Sri Mad Bhagavatam and Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. So this is a very wonderful day. Um, Recommend that we read about Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, the Srila Prabhupada Leelamrita. This is very nice. I didn't get a chance to open, but everything that you can hear, who has Srila Prabhupada on their phone? This is everything Prabhupada, all the Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, bhajans. They have one category called festivals. And you can look at the appearance days of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and listen today. There's one very, very nice one, which is in Los Angeles in February 1969. And in the recording, there's like a clock. Anyway, whatever. But Prabhupada is telling very, very nicely his whole life story and meeting Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. It's very, very wonderful. And this is a very nice thing to do on this day. So thank you very much for your kind attention. All glories to His Divine Grace, Om Vishnu Pad, Sri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and as in Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's wonderful Guru Parampara song, the verse was added on after by Srila Prabhupada's disciples to his foremost preacher disciple, Srila Bhai Charanarvinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who has now become an ocean of transcendental mercy. Hare Krishna. Shri Shri Radha Govinda Dev Ki Jai Nitai Gaur Premanandi Hari Bol. Jai.